So I'm here today with Robert and would love to
Welcome to my home in Half Moon Bay, California.
would love to hear your story, Robert. How did you start? Where were you born?
Well, I was born in New Jersey, but my dad moved out to Silicon Valley in 1971. He was an engineer, moved to Cupertino. Who knew Cupertino mattered to the world? Except this little computer company started there called Apple. And when I was in junior high, I was in the first Apple Computer Club at Junior High in Cupertino, and I always fell in love with new things because of my dad's engineering background and because the world around me was all about building new things and trying new things. And that led to me doing what I do, which is go around the world and interview tech executives, or not just executives, but people who are building the future, innovators, engineers, and CEOs of companies and founders of people who are doing interesting new things.
What was your degree in? Did you go to college?
I tried to get a computer science degree because my dad always wanted me to be technical, and it didn't work. I was in a physics class during the '89 earthquake, and I said, "It's a big story," because I was always into photography and story, journalism and stuff like that, and that was what I was doing for fun. And around '89, when the earthquake happened, I switched from computer science and trying to please my dad to being doing what I wanted, which was journalism. So I went to San Jose State later for a journalism degree.
Did you get it?
No. one Shakespeare paper away from graduating. Today it's a class, or maybe I'd have to take 3 or 4 classes to complete the degree, but today it doesn't matter. That was in 93, and nobody really cares if you have a degree or not in the journalism world. In fact, I often joke that if I actually got the degree, I would have to decrease my salary.
So what was your first paying gig or job?
In journalism school, we had a rule. They had a rule that you had to take an internship somewhere, and I couldn't get an internship at the newspapers where all the journalism kids wanted to, work. And so I said, "Oh, okay. Well, that's not open to me." So I started looking for other things, and my editor got a job at a computer programming magazine. And she said, "Oh, you probably love this. It's all nerdy stuff." And it was a magazine called Basic Pro, and it was 6 people. And I got a job there, and eventually it grew to 200 people because a couple months later, Microsoft released Visual Basic, which turned out to be a very important programming tool in the 1990s for the Windows. And still is it's now .NET, It's really the team that built Visual Basic became the .NET team. And I got a job at a computer programming magazine, started doing conferences for programmers, and that's what got me into blogging. And that turned out to be a disruptive technology because it was parasitic on Google. And so Google was brand new in 98. And so blogging really started following Google's importance in the world. As Google got more important, blogging became more important, partly because blogs were the best way to get links, which is how Google worked. Google worked off of links to your page. If you had more links, you got higher up on the search results, at least in the early years. Now it works differently, but that's why blogging happened, and businesses started coming out in the mid-2000s, TechCrunch and Gigome, Rewrite Web, Engadget, and a whole slew of businesses that started because of blogs and because Google just kept getting more and more important.
What was it called before blogging?
Well, there was no real thing before blogging. I wrote a lot of things on forums. So I was in the late '80s. I was my friends had a BBS, so they had a a garage with 6 computers with Hayes modems, and people from around the world would call up those modems and then transfer a few files.
That's
and
probably one of them.
you know. And then AOL came out, which had forums and had sort of a profile kind of thing, and Prodigy, and then CompuServe, and then I switched over to Usenet and CompuServe, and then blogs came out and really changed from you're a member of a space to you're the space and you set the tone, and then everybody comments underneath you, and that's sort of how Facebook is today now, right? Yeah, so there wasn't, I guess the AOL was the blog of the day. That would be where you would tell people what you thought, right?
I call Facebook AOL 2.0.
Yeah, because it's a walled garden, and it's a big walled garden. But yeah, it has some of the same attributes, but
very sticky, like AOL.
Zuckerberg sure got a lot of things right and continues to. Don't see anybody competing with him. I sort of wish they would, but
Yeah.
Medium might be a interesting thing, but Medium is not social networking, and it requires you to write posts, about this long, and not everybody wants to write a post this long. Most people want to write a little thing, that's why Twitter and Facebook were so interesting.
So after the basic, where did you go get your next job?
Well, that was that was like 2000, and then the economy blew up, right?
So you worked there for a long time?
Yeah, I worked there for 93 to 2000, or 2001, and then the economy blew up. The conference business got really tough, and I moved over to working for Dave Weiner in the blogging world. His competitor was Blogger, which then became, Evan Williams started Blogger and went on to define Twitter and made $1 billion. So my competitor made $1 billion. I didn't. But it got me into this whole world, and then I got a job at NEC's where I answered telephones and sold computers because it was really tough. It was hard to find jobs, and I had to take any job. So I took a sales support job at this computer company, and it turned out 3 months after I got a job there, they came out with the thinnest tablet computer that had been sold before by that time. And a guy named Vic Anotra called me up and said, "I want one." And he was an executive at Microsoft, and later was an executive at Google, and started Google Plus at Google. So I've just been lucky to have some interesting people see me along the way and pull me into interesting things.
What made you join Rackspace?
Well, I was working at, he got me a job at Microsoft. I worked there for 3 years, and then
Same selling computers, or
no, I was
phone?
I was blogging. He liked me because he found me in a news group, and he's like, "You're doing more interesting marketing on behalf of NEC than anybody I've seen do that. And so I want you to come up and teach my evangelists at Microsoft what blogging is all about and what you're doing online," because he thought that was important, and it turned out it was. Went to Microsoft, had a famous blog there, interviewed 600 employees from the janitor to Bill Gates, built with 4 other people a community called Channel 9, which when I left it was 4 million users a month, so it was pretty nice. And then I got a job at a small little startup, burned through $10 million of cash, and then got a job at Fast Company magazine. And at Fast Company, we interviewed Graham Weston, who's the chairman of Rackspace, and we just liked each other. And when the opportunity came up, he hired my producer, and then hired me through this guy named Rob Legess, who still is my boss. And been a good ride. 6 years now. So.
Interesting story.
Yeah. Rackspace is a cloud computing company, a business infrastructure, so we support SharePoint and Exchange and cloud computing and a lot of computers. So if you watch a TED video, they come off of our servers, and that's what we do. Nobody knows about us unless you're in the computer business, but we're the plumbing underneath a lot of things.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.